Teacher, was it his sin or the sin of his parents that caused him to be born blind? So is introduced the hero of our gospel story today, a man blind from the day of his birth. Remember the context of the disciples' question. In the time in which Jesus lived, in the time the New Testament was written, it was commonly held religious belief that anyone who had any kind of ailment or problem was being punished by God. People who were poor, people who were sick, people who were down on their luck in some way were that way because they had somehow offended God. Everyone believed that God was settling accounts by inflicting severe punishments on people. Every affliction, a lost job, a house fire, a broken leg, being blind, was considered to be just deserts. People believed that sin was so offensive to God that the punishment could actually be handed on from one generation to the next until God was satisfied that the debt was paid. So, was it his sin or the sin of his parents that caused him to be born blind? You'll notice that even in such a long gospel story as we hear today, Jesus isn't actually in the story very much. A quick healing at the start, and then he's gone until the end, when he reappears to bring the healed man to full faith and confront the Pharisees about their own blindness. The focus of the story is blind people, born blind, half blind, formerly blind, forever blind. The blind man is a walking, talking parable of conversion and faith. And the blind man comes to represent us on our own journey of faith and how we can learn an important Lenten lesson from this story. Our man, while physically blind, is also symbolically blind. His blindness is deep. He is truly in spiritual darkness simply because he does not know Jesus. Notice how his faith grows as the story goes along. At first, he's that man. Later, when pressed, he describes Jesus as a prophet. In his discussion with the Pharisees, the man gives a left-handed compliment. If he were not from God, he wouldn't be able to do these things. And finally, on meeting up with Jesus again, he falls to his knees and worships him as Lord. His physical sight was restored rather quickly. His spiritual blindness was healed more slowly, but it's just as clear. The man simply had to admit his blindness. Who is he, sir, that I might believe in him? The blind man in the gospel helps us see something important on our journey to Easter. The transformation that we say we want to happen in us can only happen if we admit that, at least sometimes, we're blind to the power and the presence of Jesus. There is no sin in being blind, you know. The sin is refusing to admit that you need healing. Remember, though, that it's still Lent, a season of healing, a season of forgiveness, and a time for us to see.